Good evening. Thank you for joining me here on the Royal House of Ra. I am your host, Amenemhet Kufu El Ra. Today's show is episode 15. And we're going to be discussing about Dynasty 12. Okay, what's specific about this dynasty, you have like 7 pharaohs of this dynasty. I'm going to go into the names of the pharaohs and before I start the program. This dynasty had ruled Kemet for 2 centuries, and it was a very strong dynasty until its very end from the last ruler of this dynasty. And then the beginning of the second intermediate period, which Kemet went under another decline afterwards. So what I like to do is thank all of you who tuned in to last show, episode 14, which was discussing about Dynasty 11. And I thank all of you for supporting the show. Continue to support the show. I love the support I'm getting from the people who's listening into the show. Continue to do so. Also, please subscribe to the show. Click onto the notification so you know when new shows are aired, and like and share as well. Now, as I mentioned many times before, it doesn't cost you anything to just subscribe or click the like button as well, so please do that. Let me get into the show here. Now, I mentioned we're going to be discussing about the pharaohs of the 12th dynasty. Now, the 12th dynasty, as I mentioned, started in 1991 BC and it ended in 1782 BC. Okay, now the first pharaoh of this dynasty was Amenemhet I. Then the second pharaoh, he ruled between 1991 BC to 1962 BC. The second pharaoh of this dynasty was Senusret I. He ruled in 1971 BC to 1926 BC. Then you have Amenemhet II, who reigned between 1929 BC to 1895 BC. Then you have Senusret II, who reigned 1897 BC to 1878 BC. And then you have Senusret III, who reigned between 1878 BC to 1797. No, from 1878 BC to 1841 BC. Then you have Amenemhet III, who ruled 1842 BC to 1797 BC. And then you had Amenemhet IV, who ruled from 1798 BC to 1786 BC. And then you also, the last and final ruler of that dynasty was Queen Sobeknefru, who reigned between 1785 BC to 1782 BC. Okay, so remember, we're still in the Middle Kingdom period. So I'm going to go into that, and let's start off. Give me a moment. Okay, let's get into this. Okay, Amenemhet I, according to Mytho, the 12th dynasty consists of 7 kings from Thebes. Our present list agree with the addition of a Queen Sobeknefru at the close of the dynasty. The first king of the dynasty was Amenemhet I, and assuming that it was he who had been vizier to Mentuhotep III. You remember that? He was the vizier of Mentuhotep III from the 11th dynasty, because he was Mentuhotep III was the last ruler of the 3rd dynasty. Okay, he seems to have risen from humble parents. An inscription from Karnak records a god's father, Senusret, a commoner, as the father of Amenemhet. His mother, Nefret, came from the area of Elephantine. Amenemhet was thus of Upper Kemetic origin, and his religious allegiance was to the god Amun. It is from this period that Amun began his rise to prominence, taking over from Montu, god of war, as supreme deity at Thebes. He was to reach his apex in the 21st dynasty, when Hethra, high priest of Amun, declared himself pharaoh. Amenemhet's almost 30-year reign brought a degree of stability to Kemet that it had not seen for 200 years. It also laid the foundations for the strength of the 12th dynasty itself, continued for a further 2 centuries until the breakdown under Queen Sobeknefru and the confusion of the second intermediate period. Following his enthronement in 1991 BC, Amenemhet's first move was to cruise the Nile with his fleet, crushing recalcitrant Norrecs, Asiatics, and Nubians on the southern frontiers. He then set up a new power center away from both Thebes and Acropolis, almost 20 miles, 32 kilometers south of the old capital of Memphis. The king chose the site so that he might keep a watchful eye on both Upper and Lower Kemet, and accordingly called his new city Ichitare, Sacer of the 2 lands. The actual site of this fortified city has yet to be found. Amenemhet's reign brought many changes, and to emphasize this renaissance, the king took the additional title of Wilhelm Masvaret, repeater of births, implying that he was the first in a new line. Amenemhet's most significant act, however, was the introduction of the practice of co-regency, an institution that was to endure throughout the 12th dynasty. Thus, in year 20 of his reign, he associated his son Senusret with him, and they shared the throne for 10 years before Amenemhet murdered. During this period, the younger man was mainly in charge of military matters, such as maintaining the eastern and western borders, continuing to push to the south. An inscription dated in year 24 of Amenemhet and year 4 of Sunuzuret, for example, records an expedition against the sand dwellers, the Asiatics, who lurked on Kemet's northern eastern frontier towards Gaza Strip. The royal burial ground was moved once again and now located at Lish, not far from the new capital at the entrance to the Fatima. Amenemhet pyramid was similar to those built during the Old Kingdom, only smaller. The inner core was constructed with small limestone blocks, many of them taken from ruined Old Kingdom monuments at Giza and Absar, while the exterior was faced with white Tura limestone long since stolen. Likewise, the once finely relieved decorated mortuary temple on the east face has been largely destroyed. Little is known of the internal agreements of the pyramid, since access is denied by groundwater seepage. The burial chamber was probably robbed in antiquity, although this has yet to be confirmed. Okay, now we're going to go into his son, Senusret I. Okay, so with the pharaoh Amenemhet I, he has, he done a lot of great things, but one thing he did was he did war with the Nubians and the Asiatics to protect his southern frontiers, and he had military campaigns with other groups like the Sand Dwellers, and also with now he was not born of royal dynastic line. He was basically what you would call a commoner. He was an average Joe who risen to power and then created a dynasty, a royal dynasty. But let's get to his son, Senusret. Judging by the story of Sinhui, the young prince Senusret was away on an expedition against the Libyans in the western desert when Amenemhet was murdered. Senusret obviously hurried back to the capital and brought matters swiftly under control. He scotched any further attempts to spread the coup and made arrangements for his father's burial at Lish. The old king's astute decision to rule with his son for a decade paid dividends, and Sinus entered on a reign that was to last a further 34 years. The period from the 20th to the early 19th century BC in the 12th dynasty was the zenith of Kemetic literature and craftsmanship, as attested by the remarkable examples of jewelry found in the tombs of the royal ladies at Dashur and Lashum. Senusret I consolidated many of the policies established by his father. Kemet looked to the south for gold and agricultural goods, maintaining its control over the region through a series of at least 13 forts, which extended as far as the Second Cataract. Quarries and mines were exploited throughout the country, with hard stones coming from the Wadi Hamamet and gold from the mines near Koptos. Senusret also led various expeditions to the south and for the first time to the desert oasis. As recorded on inscriptions, and Stilt at Bene Hassan and Esset in Middle Kemet. The king's overall control of Kemet is documented at almost 36 sites from Alexandria to Aswan, where he carried out building work. In year 3 of his reign, Senusret rebuilt the temple to Re-Atum at the ancient center of the sun cult Hippocampus, and he actually appears to have performed part of the re-foundation ceremonies there. In year 30, his jubilee year, he erected two 66 feet 20 meters red granite obelisks there, each weighing 121 tons. One of the piers still stands and is the oldest standing obelisk in Kemet. Although the temple has entirely disappeared, and exceptionally rare and fragmentary leather scroll records part of the text from the Great Dictionary still of Senusret, probably copied down as a scribal exercise some 500 years afterwards. Senusret took Amenemhet II, his son, by his chief wife, Queen Sobeknefru, as co-ruler at least 3 years before his death, as recorded on a private still, the Simutu, now in the British Museum. Senusret died in about 1926 BC, but not before he had built a pyramid at least a mile south of his father's monument. As in Amenemhet I pyramid, the burial chamber is inaccessible due to groundwater. 9 small satellite pyramids belonging to the royal ladies were also built within the complex. Excavations by the Metropolitan Museum, New York, between 1908 and 1934 revealed the names of some of the tomb owners, but others lack any identifying inscriptions on their sarcophagus or funerary equipment. Queen Sobeknefru pyramid, slightly larger than the others, stood in the southeast corner, and that Senusret's daughter It was to the south of the king's pyramid. Other daughters probably included the Princess Nufret Sobek, Nufret Patat, and Nedsedajit. Alright. Okay. Now we're going to go into Amenemhet II. Now, during his reign, under Senusret reign, Senusret I, great literature and masterpiece of work has been done on his reign. So this was a period of great knowledge and artsmanship. So let's go into his son and see what his son did. Now his son did something tremendous here as well, but we're going to go into that. Okay. Amenemhet II, Senusret, was succeeded after his death in 1926 BC by his son Amenemhet II, who continued the longevity of of the family with a reign of 34 years. It was around this time that the combatants first began to recognize the opportunities available in the Fayum area for hunting, fishing, and cultivating, and it was thrust to render the irrigation system more effective that the Great Bahr Yusuf Canal that feeds the Fayum from the Nile was widened and deepened. The foreign policy of Amenemhet II drove mainly to consolidate the work of his predecessors in foreign affairs, although there are records of an expedition to the Red Sea and in year 28 of another to the land of Punt. There is ample evidence of the exchange of diplomatic gifts between Kemet and the Levant during this period. Jewelry bearing the king's cartouche has been found in the royal tombs at Bilabas in Lebanon, especially in that of the local prince Isahem Nube, together with local copies of typical 12th dynasty jewelry. In Kemet, a great treasure was discovered in the foundations of the temple of Montu at Tad, just south of Luxor, Thebes, consisting of 4 bronze boxes inscribed on the lid in hieroglyphics, Metaneta, with the name of Amenemhet II. The boxes contained a large number of silver cups of Levantan and Aegean origin, as well as Babylonian cylinder seals and lapis lazuli amulets from Mesopotamia. The whole hoard was probably either a diplomatic gift or tribute. The silver cups represented an extremely high intrinsic value at the time, since silver was far more precious than gold in Kemet. There is also an apparent increase at this time in the number of Levant names recorded in Kemet, presumably belonging to those brought in as domestic servants. Contacts with Crete to the northwest across the Great Green, Wither, as the combatants called the Mediterranean, are evident from combatant finds in Crete at Knossos, including the lower half of a statue of a man named Yusuf, a typical Mayan pottery chimeras where in Kemet at town sites such as Lahun and in a tomb at Apidos. Amenemhet II built his pyramid at Dashur to the east of the earlier 4th dynasty periods of Nefru. Why he should have turned to that site is not known, although the choice may have been connected with the building projects close by in the Fayum. All that now remains of his pyramid is a great mass of eroded mud bricks, originally the core of a pyramid some 263 feet 80 meters square. Now, under Amenemhet II, he created a strong foreign policy where he traded with other civilizations like in Mesopotamia, trade through the Mediterranean, Crete, even to Punt. So I mean, his foreign policies reached. So Kemet had always. So that's why you would see different potteries and other stuff that you would see that's coming from different places, like from Babylon and in these other places, because there was constant trade at this period. So this illusion that the Kemetans were possibly Mediterraneans who came in is foolishness. It didn't happen that way. It's like with any nation of modern times, where you have different technologies and you trade with another nation to give. You have something of value. They have something you want. You trade, and you see elements of their culture within your culture and elements of your culture within their culture, and that's what trading does. Not just on the economic scale, but learning from cultural experience and adapting to things that's different. So we're going to get into Senusret II, continuing the family tradition of alternating names. Senusret II succeeded his father, Amenemhet II, in about 1895 BC, having been associated with his father as co-regent for at least 3 years. His reign was a peaceful one in which he continued the expansion of cultivation in the Fayum and established a good rapport with the provincial elites. Indeed, inscriptions in the great tombs of Narak at Beni Hassan in Middle Kemet, especially that of Ka-Numhotep II, bear witness to their cordial relations with the king and the honors he had bestowed upon them. Senusret II chose to build his pyramid at Lashun, once again essentially of mud brick that became heavily eroded when the outer limestone casting was gone. An innovation in an attempt to beat the tomb's robbers was the location of the pyramid entrance in the surrounding pavement on the south, instead of the usual north side, rather than in the actual structure. Even this failed to deter the looters, although in 1899 Flinders Petrie did find in the flooded burial chamber a marvelous gold and inlaid royal urns that must have come from the king's despoiled mummy. Returning to the site in 1913, Petrie excavated 4 shaft tombs belonging to members of the royal family in a gully on the south side of the pyramid. All had been robbed but one, that of the Princess Sethra unit, produced a vast collection of personal jewelry and cosmetic items, which had been placed in 3 ebony caskets in a side wall niche. Due to the early flooding of the tomb, the niche had filled up with mud, and the robbers who had smashed into the prince's sarcophagus missed the hoard. Almost the group were to extremely fine gold inlaid pastel pictorials and a delightful diadem with tall thin gold plumes and inlaid rosettas on the headband. Near the pyramid, Petre found the pyramid town built for the workers employed on the construction. Now known as Kahun, its original name was Hintet Senusret. Senusret is satisfied. Kahun was like an Kemetan Pompeii, since it seems to have been suddenly abandoned with many possessions left behind. Excavations at the site yield fascinating new information about the social and economic life of the ancient Kemetans. The difference in prosperity within the community were revealed by the varying size and quality of the house. Dozens of papyri covering a great range of topics, from accounts and legal texts to genealogical and veterinary treatises, shed new light on the administration and logistics of a multiracial and disciplined workforce. Okay. Now we're going to go into Senusret III. Okay. Let's get into this. Senusret III. Senusret came to the throne in about 1878 BC and is thought to have reigned for 37 years. He is probably the best known visually of all the Middle Kingdom pharaohs, with his broadening, hooded eye and careworn portraits carved mainly in hard black granite. In Middle Kingdom royal portrait sculpture, there is a move away from the almost bland, godlike, and complacent representation of the Old Kingdom to a more realistic likeness. Part of this stems from the realization that the king, although still a god on earth, is nevertheless concerned with the earthly welfare of his people. The Kemetans no longer place huge emphasis and resources on erecting great monuments to the king's immortal hereafter, as the rather inferior Middle Kingdom pyramid shows. Instead, greater emphasis was placed on agricultural reforms and projects, best exemplified by the Great Bahar Yusuf Canal. Mythos describes Senusret as a great warrior and usually mentions that the king was of great height, 4 cubits, 3 palms, 2 fingers, breadth over 6'6" 6'6" and 2 meters. His commanding presence must have helped the success of his internal reforms in Kemet. Most notably, he managed to curtail the activities of the local nomarchs, whose influence had once again risen to challenge that of the monarchy by creating a new system of government that subjugated the autonomy of the nomarchs. The king divided the country into 3 administrative departments: the north, the south, and the head of the South Elephine and Lower Nubia, each administered by a council of senior staff which reported to a vizier. Senusret III as military leader. With the eternal stability of the country assured, Senusret III was able to concentrate on foreign policy. He initiated a series of devastating campaigns in Nubia quite early in his reign, aimed at securing Kemet's southern borders against incursions from her bellicose neighbors and at safeguarding access to trade routes and to the mineral resources of Nubia. To facilitate the rapid and ready access of his fleets, he had a bypass canal cut around the first cataract at Aswan. A canal had existed here in the Old Kingdom, but Senusret III cleared, broadened, and deepened it, repairing it again in year 8 of his reign according to an inscription. Senusret was forced to bring the Nubians into line on several occasions in year 12 and 15 of his reign, and he was clearly proud of his military prowess in subduing the recalcitrant tribes. A great still at Simna, now in Berlin, records, "I carry off their women, I carry off their subjects, went forth to their wells, smote their bulls, I reaped their grain, and set fire thereto." He pushed Kemet's boundaries further south than any of his forebears and left an admonition for future kings. "Now, as for every son of mine who shall maintain this boundary which my majesty has made, he is my son, he is born of my majesty, the likeness of a son who is the chairman of his father, who maintains the boundary of him that begat him. Now as for him who shall relax it and shall not fight for it, he is not my son, he is not born to me." No wonder Senusret was worshipped as a god in Nubia by later generations, or that his sons and grandsons maintained their inheritance. Although most of Senusret's military energies were directed against Nubia, there is also record of a campaign in Syria, but it seems to have more one of the retributions and to gain plunder than to extend the Kemet's frontiers in that direction. The king as builder. So we're going to go into that. The king as builder. I hope everyone is enjoying this. I know I am. So the 12th dynasty was, excuse me, before I go into where it talks about the kings who builders, the 12th dynasty was a great dynasty. Now, it is a dynasty is the second dynasty of the Middle Kingdom. But it was a great dynasty, no doubt. They had its ups and downs, but they, especially under Senusret III, he seemed to have expanded his boundaries to a certain extent, and he had significant military campaigns, even stretching as far as Syria down into Nubia. But let's go into this. Much of the wealth acquired in the Nubian campaigns was directed towards the temples in Kemet and their renewal. An inscription from Abydos of the official icon Honofret tells of the king's commission that he refurbish Osiris barge, shrined and chapels with gold, electrum, lapis, lesel, malachite, and other costly stones. A series of 6 life-size granite standing figures of the king wearing the Nem's headdress were commissioned for the temple of Mentuhotep I at Deir el-Bahar, Thebes, where they lined the lower terrace. Local graffiti record the maintenance of a large body of priests associated with the cult of Amun, indicating that although the capital and burial ground of the kings had moved to the north entrance, and respect were still maintained for the religious center of Thebes, just to the north of Karnak at Neg el Metamud. Senusret III erected a large temple to the old god of the Theban area, the war god Montu, remodeled in the New Kingdom and also later in Ptolemaic and Roman times. The Middle Kingdom structure has disappeared, although the remains of the 2 finely carved granite gateways of the original temple were found in 1920, together with some splendid statues and other inscriptions. Senusret III built his pyramid in the Middle Kingdom cemetery at Dashur at 350 feet 107 meters square. It is the largest of the 12th Dynasty pyramids, but the disappearance of the limestone casting have caused the mud bricks core to deteriorate severely. Like his father, he also attempted to conceal the entrance. Hold on for a moment. Like his father, he also attempted to conceal the entrance, this time under the paving of the surrounding court on the west side. Needless to say, the device was the device was ineffective against tomb robbers. Excavations by Jacques de Morgan in 1894 to 1896 in 1894 to 1895 in the northern section of Senusret's pyramid enclosed reveals the tomb of his queen Mefret and the princess Set Hathra, his sister and possibly wife. Both tombs produce some fine jewelry which survived because it was placed elsewhere in the tomb and not on the subsequently rifled mummies. From Amenemhet III to Queen Sobeknefru. Senusret son Amenemhet III reigned for 45 years, and like his father, he left a series of portraits remarkable for their individuality and fine work. His reign was the apogee of economic growth in the Middle Kingdom. Interest in the agricultural potential of the pharaohs increased, and a huge temple was created to the local crocodile god Sobek. Okay. All right. His reign was because of economic growth in the Middle Kingdom. Interest in the agricultural potential of the pharaohs increased, and a huge temple was erected to the local crocodile god Sobek at Amenemhet, where he is associated with the falcon Horus the Elder. Above all, Amenemhet III exploited the quarries of Kemet and the turquoise mines in Sinai. There are more than 50 rock inscriptions in Sinai recording almost continual mining expeditions between year 2 and 45 of his reign. It is a curious fact that despite his long reign, there are very few inscriptions of Amenemhet I and from Kemet itself. Over 90% are from outside the country, etc. From okay. Now let's go into this. Okay, over 90% from the outside of the country, from Sinai. They do, however, give a valuable sight into his reign and provide long lists of officials and works in the quarries. Almond the pyramids, as usual, features of Amenemhet reign not seen since the Old Kingdom under Senusret was that he built two pyramids for himself. One at Dusha was 342 feet, 104 meters square. The other at Hara was 334 feet, 102 meters square. The first must have been abandoned since the king was buried at Hawara, where his pyramid and the large associated structure on the south side of the pyramid, his mortuary temple, attracted the attention of several of okay. All right. So he had built these pyramids almost in same style as of the Old Kingdom period. All right. So the first must have been abandoned since the king was buried. However, where his pyramid and the large associated structure on the south side of the pyramid, his mortuary temple, attracted the attention of several of the classical writers, from Herodotus, mid-5th century BC onward. The great 1,000 by 800 feet, 305 by 244 meters building was hailed as a wonder, a veritable labyrinth to be compared with the fabled structure at Konos, Crete. Strabo described its many rooms and corridors in minute detail, but when Patry excavated the devastated site in 1888 to 1889, he had the greatest difficulty in reconciling the few architectural details he uncovered with Strabo's described. So great was the ancient destruction. Amenemhet pyramid, as usual for the period, was built of mud brick and cased with limestone. Okay, Amenemhet the pyramid, as usual for the period, was built of mud brick and cased with limestone. Once more, the entrance was moved from better concealment and was located of central on the pyramid's south face. The internal arrangement of Amenemhet pyramid was quite extraordinary, with dead end pages, concealed trapdoors and sliding panels in passage roofs, and complicated series of the quartets block topped by two revealing chambers of limestone blocks and a huge brick arch over all complicated. Hollowed out like a lidless box which had been sunk into the ground and the pyramid built over it. Within the box burial chamber were two quartzite sarcophagus, the larger for the king, the smaller for his daughter, the Princess Nefertari, together with their quartzite canopic chests. When the burials had been completed, the chamber was sealed by a single roofing slab of some 45 tons, and then everything was backfilled to remove all traces. The eternal security arrangements, reminiscent of the false doors and trapdoors seen in some Curse of the Mummy type films, should have been impenetrable yet robbers impenetrable yet robbers still managed to penetrate the tomb, ravage the bodies, and burn the wooden coffins. Okay, before I move on, I found this very disturbing during ancient Kemet's time. There was really no form of security to secure the death sites of these kings of ancient Kemet. It just seems like for example, like the Valley of the Kings, and I believe there's a valley for the queens. They buried them there, but it's like these grave robbers, they just go in there and do so much damage, and then when they did damage, they stole the loot, the treasure, and then they would just burn and desecrate the bodies of these kings. I don't see what was their motive. Who are these grave robbers? Because if it's normal Kemites who's doing this, they would be discovered. Who are they going to sell this treasure to? So I'm assuming is these nomadic people who was traveling to Kemet, and they knew where these tombs were. But I find it kind of disturbing. I don't know. How do you guys think about that? What is you guys' opinion on it? Okay, now let's get to this part here. The end of the dynasty. Amenemhet III was the last great ruler of the Middle Kingdom, as numerous inscriptions on monuments from Syria to the Third Cataract of the Nile testify. Little is known about the successor, Amenemhet IV. It is even possible that he did not reign independently, but only as co-regent with his elderly father. It is presumed that he died prematurely, and that a queen, Sobeknefru, acted as regent, apparently ruling later in her own right for a short time. Neither Amenemhet IV nor Queen Sobeknefru featured much in the written records. No pyramid definitely inscribed by inscriptions is known for either ruler, although it has been suggested that two pyramids located about 3 miles 4.8 kilometers south of the Dashur at Masakhun might belong to them. This theory is based on the fact that the structures appear to be more sophisticated technically than the Harari pyramids of Amenemhet III, and should therefore be later. Since there are no other known rulers between Amenemhet III and the end of the dynasty, the theory may be correct. Okay, so this is the end of the 12th dynasty. Now, the last two rulers of the 12th dynasty, Amenemhet IV and Queen Sobeknefru, not too much, as it mentioned, not too much was written about these two individuals. They didn't do too much significantly. Amenemhet IV, father Amenemhet III, was the last great king of the 12th dynasty. So the 12th dynasty was a great dynasty. It was a great dynasty for literature, foreign policy, artwork, and also a lot of successful military campaigns to protect a southern frontier from Nubia and Punt, and a northern frontier from as far stretched to Syria and the sand dwellers. Okay, so I hope all of you enjoyed this. The next episode would be on Dynasty 13. Okay, Dynasty 13 and Dynasty. Hold on, let's see. It will be on Dynasty 13. And let's see. There's not so much. There's some information on Dynasty 13. But we're going to go. We're going to discuss. Because the next episode would be episode 16. And we'll be discussing Dynasty 13 and Dynasty 14. Okay, so we're going to be discussing about Dynasty 13 and Dynasty 14. So there's a lot. We're really going to get into this, and then we're going to go into dynasties. And then yeah. So we're going to discuss about, as I mentioned, on episode 16, we're going to discuss about Dynasty 13 and 14. There's not a lot of information on those dynasties. So we're going to just go over what we can with that. And then after Dynasty 13 and 14, then we'll go into Dynasty 15. Now, Dynasty 15 is the period where the Hyksos was involved. This was during Kemet's weak period. Okay. All right. So this was the period of the Hyksos. This was the pharaohs, the Hyksos pharaohs of the 15th dynasty. Okay. And I believe that was part of, I think, the 16th dynasty as well. We'll go into that, but let's focus on episode 16 where we will be discussing 13 and 14. Now, I may do 15 and 16 and 17 as well. Let's see. Should I do that? I'll think about it, what I'm going to do. But once again, thank you for tuning into the show. Remember, episode 16 will be this Thursday at 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and 12 p.m. Pacific Time. So I look forward for all of you. Once again, please remember to like, subscribe, also hit the notification and share. Once again, thank you for tuning in to the Royal House of Ra. I am your host, Amenemhet Kufu El Ra, and thank you for tuning in, and God bless you all. Take care.